Today's episode of Voiced is from r/pro revenge and is about users avenging childhood bullies in outrageous ways and a fierce parental confrontation over charity seating. But what lengths will they go to for sweet revenge? Subscribe if you enjoy.
I got back at childhood bullies by destroying an entire town. Pardon my English, as it isn't my first language. I was browsing r/ask Reddit and came across a thread about whatever happened to that Trenchcoat kid at your school. I was that Trenchcoat kid and I came back to town and destroyed it years ago. As a background, I grew up in a conservative little town in a conservative rural area heavily dominated by religion. This makes people put great stock on moral purity and appearances. Keeping up the facade is the most important thing. Everyone must go to church weekly and people are heavily judged for appearing sinful. This was a bad thing for me as the cards were heavily stacked against me from birth. You see, I am a child born from sexual assault. My mother lost her parents when she was young and was taken in by her uncle and aunt. The uncle had an important position in the local religious hierarchy, so when he and a couple of his friends started sexually abusing my mom, it was ignored by everyone. When she got pregnant, it was painted as showing that she was promiscuous, running around seducing married men. She was cast out. Why she didn't move out of town, I don't know, but yes, there I came into the picture, born out of wedlock and with no father, branded as a sinful outcast. My childhood was terrible. I don't go into details, but enough to say that by the time I started going to school, I was quite damaged. School made it worse. I was bullied relentlessly. Teachers were part of it, since they were all part of the religious community, which saw me as stained. Imagine being the only black kid in a town run by the Ku Klux Klan, and you get close to how it was. So yeah, in school I became that Trenchcoat kid or its local cultural equivalent. I became weird and hostile on purpose to turn people off. People were casting me into the mold of being damaged and stained. So yeah, I took it and turned it into something to protect myself with. Despite all this opposition, I managed to graduate with decent grades. A distant aunt, my only decent relative, helped me get into a college in an actual city. She was the black sheep of the family and saw herself in me, maybe? Around this time, my mother drank herself to death. Can't blame her for it. She had a life insurance policy that helped me study. City life liberated me. I went into therapy and managed to treat the wounds that town had sliced into me. I got rid of that terrible town, but I guess some part of it never left me. Years went by. I became a sort of analytical consultant. I work for an international company that does out-of-the-box analysis for other companies. I won't go into details to protect my identity, but we assist in solving all kinds of situations. Well, in my line of work, I'm sometimes called in to help with downsizing operations. This is unfortunate. I feel for the people who get fired, but if I don't do it, someone else will. A couple of years ago, I got an assignment to go into 3 different factories and assess them wholesale, then come up with a suggestion on which of them to move abroad. My hometown was among those 3 factories. You see, the unfortunate town I grew up in was one of those one smokestack towns, like we say in my country. There was one factory and some agriculture. Everyone worked in those jobs, like 60% of people in the factory. The rest of the economy revolved around supporting the factory and the people working there. Most of the people were looking forward to nothing but a job at the factory after getting out of school. The religious community running the town managed the factory as well. The prominent figures in the community tended to be bosses in the factory. This meant that the factory wasn't run very well. Promotions were based on holiness, not on merit or skill. The trip back to the hometown was glorious. Most people didn't recognize me at first. The chubby outcast had become outwardly just another corporate drone. I inspected all the paperwork, listened to all their speeches and lies, audited the processes. In the process, I dropped hints, and finally they got who I was. The factory people threw a party for me then for old times' sake. Many of my old school buddies were there. We remembered fake good times together. I threw shade on every part by bringing up certain events of bullying I had endured, just to see the atmosphere turn awkward. Then I laughed at it like it was always a joke, and I had grown out of it. Inside, I was seething with hatred and enjoying it all. I really loved seeing their faces, seeing what they had become, because forget it, I was going to take it all away from them. In the end, they seemed relieved, believing that they were lucky it was me doing the audit, that the hometown boy would protect them. After my visit, lasting a couple of days, was over, I cruised around the town in my rented car just to see how the people lived and to remember what it was like. My state of mind was something close to sexual arousal. I had never understood why people pursue positions of power, but now I understood. The rest is, as they say, history. I wrote a really scathing report documenting every little flaw and mistake ever done in the town plant. I didn't need to lie or fabricate. I simply took things that existed and polished them until they looked even worse than they were. The factory was shut down, and in the following 3 years, the town died. No business venture ever came to replace it. Drug use and alcohol use spiked, as did crime and domestic violence. Lives fell apart, families fell apart. They still haven't recovered, save for a few brighter souls who moved away. I still stalk them on social media sometimes, enjoying how terrible their lives are, how they all finally got to pay for what they did to me and my mom. I don't feel a slight bit of remorse. If I could do it all again, I would. Only I'd first make it so I could be present to watch when they received the news about the factory being shut down. Hell, in my fantasy version of the events, I'd stay in town for a year just to see everyone fall apart. In reality, I will only go back there once. When my uncle finally dies, I'm going to go and urinate on his grave.
Wow, what a powerful and intense journey. The transformation from a bullied outcast to a corporate powerhouse is nothing short of mesmerizing. It's a testament to resilience and the complexities of revenge, showing just how deeply one's past can shape their future. And speaking of intense encounters, let's turn our attention to something quite different. In a moment of unexpected chaos and confrontation, we meet the embodiment of entitled behavior on a bus. Get ready to witness a clash that escalates in a way few could have anticipated. Trust me, it's a wild ride filled with unexpected twists and a dash of instant karma. I do not care if you have cancer, my child deserves your seat. This encounter happened about 7 months ago. I do not want to insult your intelligence because you most likely already know what EM and me stands for, but I should say that EK in this story stands for embarrassed kid and OG stands for old gentleman, 60-some-year-old guy. The kid was very polite and sorry, so this story isn't about him. Also, I'm translating this into English, so bear with me. A little backstory. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer of the nasal cavity, stage 2. The tumor was quite large, but thankfully it did not spread into other tissue, so it was still contained. To get it removed, I first had to undergo aggressive chemotherapy to make it smaller. Thanks to the chemotherapy, I had severe alopecia, hair loss, which made most of my hair and even eyebrows and eyelashes fall out. At some point, I had to go bald, but I wore a wig because I didn't want to look like a skinhead or neo-Nazi. I'm 6'4" and pretty muscular, so I thought people would assume. So once, after a long chemotherapy session in the hospital, I took the bus home. There's only one bus that goes from the hospital to where I live, so I took that one only to see it was absolutely packed. I felt terrible thanks to the chemotherapy, so I asked a middle-aged man to let me sit. He was very understanding and gave me his spot without complaining. If you're reading this, thanks, bro. 2 stops later, enter entitled mother, a lovely woman with an "I demand a parley with the CEO" haircut and a 12-year-old kid. It took her roughly 5 seconds to see the bus was packed, start looking for a free seat, spot me, and start marching, or, in her case, trying to fit in the aisle between the seats while shoving others aside, to me. When I saw her, I knew I was screwed. She then stood next to me and decided to talk to me. This is the conversation that followed. "Hey, could you let my kid sit down?" "You mean me? Who else?" "Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm on my way from the hospital and..." Cutting me off. "So are we?" "Nonsense. The stop was a few kilometers away from the hospital. My boy just broke his leg, and we're coming straight from the emergency room." Her kid was standing next to her without any support, clearly embarrassed. "He's standing next to you completely fine. Look here, boy, I am 21 years old. My kid deserves to sit down." "Look, madam, I'm sorry, but I just got back from a chemotherapy session in the hospital, and I need to sit down and rest." I then moved my wig a bit to let her see my bald head. EM then straight up started yelling in my face. "Stop making excuses and get off the freaking seat, you freaking skinhead piece of junk." At this point, I was baffled. I didn't know what to say. The kid was trying to make his mother stop, and we had the attention of the whole bus. She then grabbed me and tried to yank me from my seat. I held on tight and thankfully didn't fall off. Now, enter OG, my savior. "Will you shut the freak up, you dumb cow? Who do you think you're talking to? Stop assaulting other passengers, or I will be forced to step in." Also, every dumb moron could see that the dude has cancer. No, he's just a freaking skinhead. He's got no eyebrows, you twit. Seems like that really offended EM, because she spun around on the spot and threw a falcon punch in OG's face. I was shocked and in disbelief. The whole bus was flabbergasted, and the kid probably wished he'd never been born. OG then said something unbelievable, and a golden, sweet karma moment followed. Okay, that does it. Harassing passengers on the bus, physical assault against a passenger, and now assaulting an officer. You're in deep trouble, lady. OG then pulled out a badge and told her to stay where she was. Then he pulled out his phone, called someone, and told her she was being arrested. I couldn't believe it. OG was a police officer. At this point, EM was as white as a wall. The bus had just come to a stop, so she decided she'd make a run for it, but other passengers blocked her way. She then also got charged with resisting arrest thanks to this. 3 stops later, a police car was waiting for the entitled mother and embarrassed kid. Embarrassed kid told me he was sorry for his mother's behavior, and I felt really sorry for the kid. He wasn't a bad child, but his mother was difficult. Old gentleman then talked to me and asked me if I wanted to press charges, to which I gladly said yes, took a statement, and thankfully was kind enough to let me solve everything on the phone, so I didn't have to come to the police station for questioning. In the end, entitled mother got some jail time, I think it was a few months, and some community service. I, in return, got a good story to tell and the sweet taste of instant karma. Right now, I'm riding the same bus home, as I just got back home from the hospital after a checkup, which reminded me of this. A friend, who's sitting next to me, told me I should post it here. He, as much as myself, also couldn't believe that such people existed, but it seems I proved it to him. I should also note that the surgery went well. I was declared cancer-free in November, and my hair is slowly returning. Also, I don't need to wear a wig anymore. Holy, I never had one before. Now I'll need to learn what it does. Edit 4, my fellow Redditor, you are a legend, and I truly appreciate your support. Your positive comments made my day. Before I dive into today's posts, please consider subscribing for more wild stories like these. Wow, what a roller coaster of emotions. The tale of the Trenchcoat kid taking revenge on his childhood bullies is a chilling reminder of how the past can haunt us and how one can find unexpected power in their hardships, even leading to the downfall of an entire town. Then, there's the incredible act of kindness from the old gentleman on the bus when faced with entitlement gone wild. He not only stood up for someone in need, but also served justice to that awful entitled mom. What do you guys think about these wild experiences? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Voiced. If you enjoy daily high-quality stories, please like and subscribe to show your support.